What is up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com, and in this video we're going to be doing a minor comparison of Netpeak Checker with Scrapebox. So let me blow this up. Looks like my instance is actually freezing here. Every once in a while through a process, Netpeak Checker will save the project, which is kind of annoying. I should probably find a way to turn that off so it doesn't make the job take longer to process. Um, but here in Scrapebox, I've been using this, as many of you guys know who've been watching my videos over the years, that I've been using this for a few years now, or several years. I mean, for years, and I've been making a small salary just off of uh, B2B list sales through Scrapebox, and it's been very profitable for what it is. I maintain a certain quantity of proxies every month, and build topical B2B lists with Scrapebox, but it has some downsides. So one of the things that I've been dealing with for the last 2 or 3 months or 4 months or so, maybe in that range, is the metadata grabber. Pardon me, has been having problems. If I throw in it used to be that I could throw in a million URLs and grab the metadata, and there would be no problems. Metadata is very fast with Scrapebox metadata grabber. But now, if I include more than 100,000 URLs, it oftentimes throws a fatal error and crashes the software. And that's just not going to fly, because I need that metadata so that I can, filter the metadata. For example, here's a pre-meta line. The URL to the meta title to the meta description. And what I'll do is, once I have that metadata all in one line, I will go, okay, remove URLs not containing, and then I'll use keywords. So it'll do all the filtering by the things in the meta for core topical terms, so that I can find which site pages are relevant to certain niches, when I'm creating uh, B2B lists. So that's been great, but the problem is can't process metadata properly anymore. And recently, I've been running a job for a customer for psychologists, and I had a pretty decent list that was maybe 10,000 filtered. When I went to sell the list, I said I got 15,000 verified mails, and then it turns out that I hadn't pre-filtered them because there's so many different connotations. You know, Therapy, counseling, health, behavior, psychology, you know. And so I didn't want to filter, I guess, in the past. So I left the verified mails based on broad range filtering. So the customer gets it and they notice, okay, there's a bunch of different, data, and they get kind of you're upset about that. So I go, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to re-scrape and combine the results, and I'm going to filter by um, by those terms: psychologist, or psych, therap, and counsel, and behavior, and health, and things like that. So then we are able to expand the list sample and then crunch it down. So then we get about 10,000 verified results, which is actually pretty good. For medical niches usually have a much lower yield. Like a lot of medical niches will have like half that yield, and that's pretty good because they usually don't put their emails on the pages. They either use contact forms, or you're supposed to call to make an appointment. So it yields depend on the niche you're targeting, and it also depends on the size of the niche you're targeting. So recently I was like, and the customer still was, not happy about that. So obviously this is not an ideal job for me to take, but not to be inappropriate about tacky about it, but uh, uh, it just ended up spiraling out of control, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to smash this job with a lead brick or whatever. I'm going to do 43,000 cities by 200 depth. So normal job is a million URLs processed. I said, okay, I'm going to go as deep as I can reasonably, and boom, 8 million URLs processed, right? Well, problem is with Netpeak Checker, it's way slower. like my first job that I ran yesterday morning, it took 20 hours, and it was just pulling the metadata, which is for, 750, that quantity of 8 million URLs or so crunched down to about 750,000, which might not, I don't know if that sounds like a lot to you guys, but it's pretty substantial for this kind of order, this kind of process. You can get a whole lot more URLs from scraping sitemaps, but you can get so many URLs that you can't handle them. And Scrapebox is actually, what I've learned comparing it between but comparing it with the Netpeak checker in particular, is it's actually way faster at handling data. Like if I'm dragging data in and out here, like here's 750,000 URLs, boom, there it goes, imported, ready to be handled. It just took 2 seconds. With Netpeak checker, it takes like 20 or 30 seconds or something, which is still not a big deal, but it is a lot more. If we look at the task manager, we can see that, this server that we're looking at is i5 4 gigahertz processor, somewhere in that range, and then 16 gigs of RAM. And it's taking up about 12 gigs of RAM to process right now this job in Netpeak checker, which is a lot. That's very RAM heavy. And I was looking at something earlier, which Netpeak checker was showing that it was using Java. And, some of you guys probably recognize that Java is definitely RAM hungry. Like, from what I understand, it can be easy to make certain kinds of applications with Java, but it is not a resource friendly coding language. So that's a downside to Netpeak checker. Pardon me. But anyways, so back to the problem, to give you guys a little backstory. So I I can't process metadata in Scrapebox right now because it keeps crashing, and so I started splitting it up. Split it up to, Scrapebox has the ability to split your text files, so I split it up into several chunks, and then I said, okay, I'm going to process this with the automator, and come over here to the automator, and I can import URLs using this right here. And then I can go to the miscellaneous utility and I can grab meta info from the harvested URLs. Problem is, I did this, imported the files, then it skips over to this phase to grab meta info from harvested URL list and export it as a text file. Now, I didn't try exporting as a CSV. I tried this. It didn't work. It just didn't even do the processing. It exported an empty file. So unless I'm mistaken and I picked the wrong thing, but I don't think I did. I looked through the list to see if I could find the correct grab meta, and that's right there. Grab meta info from harvested URLs. There's nothing else. You've got links, emails, phone numbers. There's no other option to grab metadata, and it just simply doesn't work. So the typical grabber is crashing. The automated variation of the grabber is crashing. Pardon me. I even tried the Email Scraper Premium plugin for the custom crawler, and I added my own definitions for metadata, and it doesn't work. So there are 3 sections of Scrapebox that are broken. I've reported at least this section to Scrapebox support, and I appreciate Scrapebox, but Scrapebox support, it oftentimes tells me that, like, everything is perfect in the world, and you're the only person in the world that never has any problem, that has problems. Like, so I just oftentimes don't report problems. So, but this has been happening for a few months. So yeah, unfortunately, the Scrapebox is way faster at collecting metadata. It used to be that in a couple hours you could grab all this data. I believe that Scrapebox is coded with something called Delphi, and it's got a comparable processing speed to C++, which is very fast. So Scrapebox is a much more performant, much more diversified utility than Netpeak Checker, based on my experience. And Netpeak Spider. There are two pieces of software that come in the bundle: the Netpeak Spider and the Netpeak Checker. The spider gives you the ability to do custom data fields, and it's more technical SEO on-page audits with that utility. The Netpeak checker allows you to actually scrape from search engines, and it allows you to scrape on-page and metadata, DNS data, contact data. You can't scrape contact data with presets in the spider unless you use reject. You can specify regular expression with the Netpeak spider, but with this utility, it's all like sort of pre-built, so it's a lot easier to use, and they give you like popular tool API integration capabilities. So for the most part, what you'd want to do if you're going to create email lists is to use the Netpeak checker. But if you wanted to create some fancy, custom footprints and things like that, then you could use the Netpeak spider using regular expression or on-page criteria. Pardon me. And then you could actually, you could also do that to find URLs, I believe. Well, actually, no. You would use that over here on the search features. You could use footprint features, and then you could take those URLs and import them, re-import them into the software, and then grab data that way. So there's a number of ways to do it. The thing about this combination of tools is it does some things that are similar. There's a certain amount of overlap with, let me open this up so you guys can see it, with the Netpeak solutions and with Scrapebox. But Scrapebox is much more performant, and it has a greater diversity of utilities. However, the great thing about this suite of tools is you can do custom fields very easily, whereas you cannot do this with Scrapebox. Scrapebox has a utility that's supposed to allow you to do that, but it's broken. It doesn't work properly. It's the custom crawler and the email premium plugin. Excuse me. So Netpeak Checker, is literally like 10 times slower than Scrapebox. Literally like 10 times slower than Scrapebox from what I've seen so far. Maybe if you just really reduce what you're trying to do, and maybe it could be some of these fields make it take a lot longer. So granted, but you have a maximum limit of 200 threads, and in Scrapebox there's a lot of features where you can go up to 500 threads. So it's faster in that regard also. And as you guys saw in the beginning of the video, there's a problem where it constantly stops to save the project, I guess in case it crashes. But frankly, it takes so long to save, I almost want to just tell it to just stop doing that. Let's see if we can, of course, the user experience here is also so slow that data backup time interval. Okay, so yeah, that's probably what. Let me turn that off. All right, so maybe this will speed up the processing time. Yeah, we don't actually. You know what? We probably need to keep that on. Just put it at like an hour. That way, it's not constantly procking. Yeah, let's turn that on and let's put it at an hour. Yeah, that way it's only several backups and it's not constantly doing anything. It's not likely to crash anyway. Even if it did, I don't know if I'd be able to resume it properly anyways. Well, actually, you know what? It saves to the project file, and you can reopen the project file and then resume the job. So yeah, that's a good thing. But we'll just have it set at an hour. Okay. So you can see right now it's 2% through at 30 minutes. So yeah, it's going to take some hours. But anyways, so the great thing, like I was saying, the great thing about this tool though is that you can process all that data inline. So instead of having to go into Scrapebox and go, okay, now I have my URLs, which is like a 20-step process, right? That's created by the automator sequence. And that's probably still better to do it because the amount of steps and the amount of data, 8 million URLs being processed over here. If 750,000 takes 20 hours, it could take a week to process 8 million URLs or any quantity of millions of euros. So that's and there's a lot more that it goes through just to in the processing phase. So I'm thinking that it's probably a good idea to continue using Scrapebox to handle the URLs. You know what I mean? And then once you get to this phase, you can you can just process everything at the same time. My mistake here, I just processed the metadata. And what I didn't know is that after the data processes, when you use the URL Explorer, see, the filtering actually works a lot different in this software than Scrapebox. Scrapebox has a better filtering feature. In this program, you can add conditions and you can set, okay, include or exclude uh, some criteria of this field. So the fields are based on whatever parameters you import into your spreadsheet, right? And so there's some good logic, contains or exactly matching or matching a regular expression, etc., etc. Certain length, right? Excuse me. But the problem is that you have to specify every keyword for every field. So even though I'm like, okay, normally I would just go, um, all the data is in one line, right? With the pre-meta, and then I'd go contains or doesn't contain, and then I just put a word, and I could do that 4 times, and then boom, my list. Or I could just put it all into a single text file, and then go URLs uh, containing entries from, and then I'd select the text file, and that's one click where I can just filter the whole sample by a few keywords, right? Whereas with Netpeak Checker, it's way less efficient. You have to really create the granular instructions on this filtering logic, and then you have to set each keyword for each criteria. So if I have 5 keywords, then that means I have to do that two other times. So that's like, as you can see, 15 filtering criteria. So, and that has to be manually entered. So instead of typing a few words and then one click, now you have to type 15 words and you have to do like, looks like 15 different clicks to set the rules. Or so it's several times more manual work. It's not a big deal, but it's a lot less efficient than it could be. So, and once you click OK, it opens the filtering up options from the total results into the URL Explorer. And the problem is that you can actually export the URL Explorer into a file, which is fine, but you can't reinsert those results back into the main processing area. So that is a huge problem because I just processed the metadata on this sample, but I couldn't, I couldn't filter based on the metadata and then feed it back through and then process new data. And yes, I tried to export and then re-add the URLs to maintain the data. I tried to figure out if I could right click or pipe over the data into some other section. There's no, unless I'm mistaken, but I literally spent a while trying to figure out how to do this. I watched videos on their onboarding playlist, and there's no indication that you can do this. So if you're confused about what I'm describing, you can't filter the results and then process new criteria on your filtered results, which I think is dumb. Not to be ugly about it or rude. It just, in Scrapebox, you have a lot more independent control over your data. Like you export into files, you can throw it in, throw it out, throw it in, throw it out. You can put it in a different add-on, process it using different add-ons, process it using different plugins. Like you have all this independent control over your data. Over here, you don't have that. You basically have to process it all at the same time. And then you can export it into some final file and then cut things out if you wish. But this is a problem because if I have 750,000 results, I don't really want to process all the data at the same time. Now, you might think that, well, if it's going to go visit the page, you might as well do it all at the same time. But there's some logic to that. But based on my experience with Scrapebox, for example, anytime you're processing data with regular expression, it dramatically slows down the process. And you can see, like, with something like this here, for example, it discovered 2 emails for this one criteria, which means that when I export this file, I'm gonna have to take that column and I'm gonna have to split that. I'm gonna have to create multiple uh, columns for every email that it discovered for that domain, which also means, excuse me, it also means that it's going to be a problem trying to process those mails through email verification systems, as far as I can tell, because in atomic web, it will take that first column and it'll spit out other columns to give you data on a verification process. And I don't know, I don't think it'll process multiple columns, because it would have to process a lot of data horizontally. So this is a concern. I haven't gotten that far yet, but it means that it's probably going to be either tedious or difficult to figure out how to do that properly. It might not even be possible. It might be unusable. So we'll have to see. I haven't gotten there yet. Um, what I'm describing though is the fact that you can't filter your data down and then go and do more sophisticated processing. Like there's no way to do that. So that's a pretty big downside. You have to wait like a day for everything that processes. So Netpeak Checker will give you a lot of fields, and if you're interested here, look at all these on-page fields. There's just a ton of neat on-page fields, and the contact data is robust. You have emails, you have phone numbers, you have um, Facebook and various social media links. And so that's pretty neat to be able to process that in line, in one single spreadsheet like that. Some neat DNS features where you can throw down country, so location can be more easily filtered. For in some cases, it pulls from some sort of database they have access to, speculated web traffic. So you get more fields, you can get more data that you don't have to kit together like you do with Scrapebox. So, pardon me, yeah, those are some pros and cons between the two softwares. I got this mainly for metadata processing, but of course you want to be able to have that in line with your emails. And now I'm seeing that, okay, it might be a problem in terms of how they give you those mails, because the Scrapebox gives them to you line by line, which is the correct way to do it. Much better to do it that way. You can handle that data. This way, you can't really handle it that easily. So yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out. But overall, I'd say there's a lot of really awesome features. It's a one-time fee. Let's take a look at the sales page. So when you go to the price for netpeaksoftware.com, this is where it lands. So you go starter, advanced, pro bundle, basic, pro, max bundle. And so that's what you want to be looking at. It's pretty expensive for a lifetime license, but if you use my coupon, you can see that 720 minus 180. My coupon's like 25% for the first purchase. So then you can get it at 50 or 540. So that's a lot better. And you get two softwares that you can use on one machine. It says devices per user, but it's uh, as far as I could tell, it was just one machine for each piece of software, and it comes with a bunch of those features. Like you can look at the products and see on page the features. I kind of explained that Netpeak Spider allows you to do. You can hook up Google Search Console, so you can kind of do client reporting. There's a white label feature for doing on page technical SEO reports and stuff like that. This one might have a lot more on page parameters in the software. Is it open? I'll take a look at it in a moment. You've got sitemap generators, which Scrapebox also has that feature, but this one also has a validation feature, multi-domain crawling. And this was really interesting. You might be able to do topical scrapes, and then because of some of the neat on-page features that the Spider has, you might be able to do keyword research in a pretty unique way using live data. Pardon me. SEO audit feature with white label capability, so you can export that stuff to PDFs. So you can even make a service out of that. That the it's a little confusing, the difference between the two, because there's some overlap on, especially on page scraping capabilities. But basically, the Spider, it does have custom scraping features, and then it's mostly an SEO, technical SEO audit utility. Whereas the Netpeak checker it does have API integrations to a variety of SEO tools, but it's mainly custom SERP scraping and uh, contact data search, DNS, whois search. It's a different side of scraping activities, pretty much. Um, let's take a look at index and cache checking tool. Let's take a look back at the server, and let's see. Excuse me. Let's look at the Spider here. So here's general crawling and indexing, links. They have an internal page rank utility, which I thought was pretty cool, actually. That kind of gives you an idea about link juice, when you're just doing an audit. So that would kind of help you to be able to make recommendations to clients for internal linking and site structure in particular. This software, if you look over here, there's only parameters in this tab, but in this one, you have parameters and reports, and you can see you've got issues, overview, site structure, and then scraping. And you can see it says to use this, you have to go to the scraping tab, which is different. Under settings, there's a scraping section, and this is where you can insert regular expression, XPath, stuff like that. So that's pretty unique. The other one doesn't give you that feature. So it's weird that they've split the scraping features. To me, it would make more sense if they just had a scraping tool, and then they had just like a purely on-page tool with the SEO plugins integrated, like the API features. Like they need an SEO on-page tool, and then they need a scraping tool. That's what I think. I think they should have both of those segmented like that. And obviously, there's scraping involved in both, but pardon me, it would make more sense if one of them was just purely reporting oriented and the other one was actually data oriented, and then they maybe connected them, or just make one tool with all the features. Like, really, I don't know why they split them like that. But pardon me. There's also a section for rules here, and you can add crawling rules, but it's only to the URL, which that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, there's some other things to integrate Google Analytics and Search Console. White label section for the PDFs. You can see it up here: SEO audit, PDF export. This one has tools kind of like the Scrapebox add-ons, but it's only a few things. It's the internal PageRank thing, sitemap validator, and generator. And that's pretty much it. It's more of a technical SEO utility, of course. So, but with the site structure stuff, and some of these parameters, like, you could do a lot of. I think the most powerful way to learn, the most, if you wanted to learn about SEO in the quickest way, with the possible, with the deepest insights, I think it's just doing audits. Truthfully, not necessarily as a service, but just by looking at the search engine ranking positions, seeing what ranks on pages, seeing how people structure their sites and how they use keywords. Pardon me. I think that is the way that I've learned things over the last several years, since 2015, and in the biggest way, because you have a lot of conflicting information from the public out there. But when you actually look at the SERPs and you look at the pages ranking, you learn that it's not as complicated as everybody makes it. Some people are just pretentious and vain, and they just are just kind of being gatekeepers out there, and things are a lot simpler than it seems. Anyways, so you can see there's a content section, and there's a lot of on-page features here, including like words. Um, and I was hoping, let's see, words, characters. There's probably a way to figure out keyword density. There's got to be a feature for that somewhere. Um, or you could, do that with some sort of rejects on page, right? So, anyways, pretty neat utility. You could also use that on, like, if you did search on a particular niche and then look for HTML sites, you could look at page structures, and you could sort of like reverse engineer, using the report section. You could reverse engineer the site structure of some of the higher performing pages in HTML, and you could very easily, like, recreate some of those site structures for assets that might be doing really well. So there's some pretty sneaky things you could do with this utility. Anyways, most of what I'm concerned with, of course, is the checker. Um, and we'll just have to see what we're able to get on the other side. I'm still getting good results from Scrapebox process. It's just that what I'm trying to do is make it easier for me to not have to do like manual metadata collection. If I can, even though it's a lot of data, like if I don't have to manually handle it at all, then once I get all that data, I can filter it, and then have to figure out a way to split those emails into different either rows or columns, one of the two. Hopefully rows. We'll have to see how that's the one gray area. I haven't figured that out yet. And then just throw them to the email verification process. But the great thing is that I should be able to provide more granular columns in the outputs. Now I can put those social media links and phone numbers, and uh, the country column might make it easier to sort, and certainly to filter. And the traffic column, of course, is all speculated clicks, but that's based on, like, I'm guessing they get that from Clickstream or someplace. Like, not exactly sure. There's probably a tooltip somewhere where it says they get that data. Um, I wouldn't. I've tried to explain to people who want traffic metrics that there's not really a good way to get it. And if it was me, I wouldn't look at the traffic metrics. I would look at the referring domains, which you can get using something like DOM Detailer. Anyways, so that's pretty much it. That's my comparison. Now here is below the video, hi.getivan.com/netpeak, and then here's my promo code. So this will give you 25% off your first purchase. I don't like to be super promotional, guys, but you guys know that there are very few things that I really recommend and use, and this is a one-time fee that does something pretty powerful. Even though it's 10 times slower than Scrapebox, the power of this thing is that you can build very granular spreadsheets all in the same interface. So, and as you can see, it's more SEO focused for audits and for large scale research and even for reporting purposes. Pardon me, but it also has a use case for building B2B email lists, and so this is a pretty awesome tool. It's got some downsides, but I'm including it in my workflow here, and I've used a number of other things that are either yearly or monthly fees that oftentimes only lets you use a much smaller number of working threads. This one lets you use up to 200 threads, so that's pretty good. It's not as good as Scrapebox, and certainly the software itself is not as fast as Scrapebox. But again, it has some significant upsides, and it's a one-time fee. So if you guys do any of these things with SEO for clients or with B2B email lists, like that one-time fee, over time you will see a permanent long-term ROI. That's one of the reasons I mainly look for one-time fee products, because then if it does something useful at all, you're guaranteed to see an ROI from that fee. So I do recommend this tool, guys. If you're into it, grab my coupon, and let me know if you guys have any unique use cases. Appreciate you watching, and I will catch you later. Thanks. Bye-bye.